This is a Triple J podcast.
Hello, welcome back to the Science with Dr. Karl podcast and our last episode for 2024. Can you believe it? I want to start off by saying thank you so much for listening each week, subscribing, liking, leaving reviews, being a part of the Science with Dr. Karl fam, and listening live on a Thursday on Triple J, asking your questions. I know some of you have been around for a long time, but I also want to say hello and welcome to new listeners, maybe new people who've joined us here on the podcast. We got a review on Apple Podcasts from Mr. Tim Shell, who said, best science Q&A, gave us 5 stars. You said one of the great converts from radio segment to podcast. It's been running for decades and there are still such great questions from the audience, which Karl and his exceptional guests answer in such a delightful and accessible way. Love this show. Tim, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We really do. Let's get into this last episode for the year, and also coming up, I'm going to tell you what you can expect for Science with Dr. Karl over summer. Let's jump in. Let's start here with Emma in Lara. Now, Emma, this one is fitting heading into these summer months. What is your question?
Hello, doctors. I'm sitting in the sun right now because my GP told me to get some vitamin D for my bone health, and I'm wondering, how does it get absorbed? Does it matter what time of day? Like, does it have anything to do with the UV index? Please discuss.
Dr. Karl?
Oh, I'm sorry. The more UV you get, the worse it is for your skin.
Yes.
I think I've mentioned before that my wife, on one occasion, as a medical doctor and doing continuous education, went to 2 lectures in one day, and one of them was from the dermatologist, who scared the heck out of her and said, you've got to put your sunblock on as soon as you have had your shower for the morning, because it takes about 20 minutes to spread across your skin. By the way, I used to wrongly think that it was there was some sort of chemical reaction. No, it's just the mechanical spreading. Like, think about painting a wall, and you paint it and it looks perfect. When it dries, you can see it's all patchy, so you've got to do a second coat. That's what sunblock does, but it's got to spread. So the first thing lecture was, dermatologists wear sunblock all the time. And the second one in the afternoon was from the orthopedic surgeons who deal with bones. And their lecture was entitled Slip, Slop, referring to sunblock, and crack, break a bone, and end up being, getting bone surgery. Okay, so you got to get some, but not too much. You need about 15 minutes during the middle of the day between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m, ignoring daylight saving, just stick to God's time or the universe's time. And your body turns one chemical into another, which is the vitamin D, and it needs the ultraviolet. Specifically, it needs the ultraviolet B. So the good news is that sunlight, depending on where you are in the world, will give you all the ultraviolet, all the vitamin D that you need. But the bad thing is it'll be bad for your skin. A few provisos here. Firstly, skin colour. The darker your skin colour, the more you need, which is why evolution gave us dark-coloured people at the equator and light-coloured people at the poles. Season, you need more in winter, less in summer. And does that kind of make you sad there, that there's all these bad things about the sunlight?
Yes, because I have osteoporosis, so I need the vitamin D. But look, I'll just be careful and put sunscreen on most of the time.
Yeah, look, it is a hard one to navigate through. And thank you for raising awareness. This has been a Triple J public service announcement.
Yes.
Yeah, I was told, Emma, because I was feeling really fatigued, and I realised it was particularly during winter that I wasn't getting that beneficial kind of morning sun, because I was doing mornings on Triple J, and I still am, not getting that apparent 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. sun, which is really good for you and doesn't maybe have the higher UV rating that you get from midday onwards, right, Dr. Karl?
That's it.
Yeah, so I wasn't getting, I don't get it, Emma. So I sometimes have to take a supplement during winter. It's hard. It's hard because, by the time some of us get out in the sun, it's maybe a little more dangerous. But sounds like you can get that integral time at the beginning and end of the day. But Emma, all the best with it, okay?
And get your sun on the weekends, Lucy.
Oh, that's true. Exactly. My girl, I am off. Nick and Winuna, you've got a question about cicadas. You've noticed something.
G'day, doctors. I'm just wondering, why are there so many cicadas this year in particular?
Hang on, Nick, can you stop talking for a second? I feel like we can hear them in the background.
Yeah, you probably can. They're going ballistic.
Is that cicadas?
Yeah.
You hear that?
Mate,
I'm up in the escarpment and they're just screaming all day.
The escarpment inland of the Wollongong coast? That escarpment? Or okay, I'm guessing there's more. Okay, wow.
So, Nick, your question is why there are so many this year. You feel like you have noticed an upward slope of cicadas, maybe not in recent years?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like this year in particular, it's just been crazy for them. And previous years, I haven't really noticed them as much.
Nick,
this
they
year,
are
they're going
so
crazy.
loud behind you. I love it. It's totally backing up your question. Dr. Karl, can you speak to this at all?
Yeah, so firstly we had a very wet winter of 2024, followed by a hotter than average spring. So that accelerated their emergence from the ground, they being mostly the greengrocer species, which have a life cycle of around 7 years. And so this is the year that they're coming out. And there's another species as well coming up, but I've forgotten the name of it. And you've got another factor, which is, what is it, implying that something you see something is true. You're hearing them right now. November and December is when they come out in their peak. So therefore you're thinking, oh my God, they're really loud now, and it's the loudest it's ever been. It's called something or other. I'll come to
Confirmation bias?
Confirmation. Thank you, Dr. Lucy.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it. Thank you. What a team we are. And so it's all those things put together, but there are in fact more of them than in other years because of those two factors of the rain and the hotter than average spring.
Okay.
Oh, makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Say hi to the
Nick.
cicadas for us.
Cheers, I will do.
Will in the Mornington Peninsula. Will, you got a question about solar power. What's going on?
Yeah, hey doctors. So I've been thinking a bit about renewable energy, and it's awesome, and solar and wind love it. But I know that when the sun's not shining, solar's not working, and we've got some firming forms of power, and we're transitioning to gas. But obviously there's batteries and hydro. Why aren't we using that extra solar that we capture and that costs money as we put it back on the grid to create hydrogen?
Because we haven't got the infrastructure for it at the moment. Now, when you say we're transitioning to gas, that means we're going more and more into fossil fuels. And Australia's in a unique position where we're the number one producer of natural gas, and yet we've got the highest prices in the world and we have to import it from overseas.
Mm.
And they pay hardly any revenue. So Qatar, which produces less than us, makes $90 billion a year in revenue. Australia makes $1 billion a year in revenue. Think how many skills that would buy. So forget the natural gas thing, that's just a whole con. But you're right about the means of storing the energy off peak. And there's a whole bunch of things, including hydro schemes around Australia, where there's a whole lot of sites that are not going to be causing anybody problem, according to the people who have looked at them carefully. And the electric car batteries, because if every car in Australia was an electric car with a battery, they could run the entire Australian domestic grid for a week. So there's the battery will store 100 kilowatt hours of energy, and yet an average house uses 10. So that's like 10 days of stuff. And hydrogen is another way of storing energy, and we just haven't got the infrastructure for it. There are disadvantages to hydrogen, which is that when you store it, you need a fair amount of energy to compress it, and it leaks. But, hey, you're getting the energy for free from the sun. The disadvantage, the advantage of it is that we definitely need it for the following things of ships and planes. Between them, they account for 5% of emissions, and we could run them entirely off hydrogen. So we are heading in that way, but Australia's among the slowest of the developed countries. And in fact, we've locked ourselves into burning fossil fuels until 2050, which seems to be crazy.
Okay. Well, thank you. That answered my question. Have a good day.
You.
Thanks, Will. We got
Thank
some
you, Will.
questions, follow-ups about the cicadas. Someone saying,
Yes.
Dr. Karl, were you looking more for the term recency bias than confirmation bias?
I have never heard the word recency bias, but I love it. If something's happening right now, therefore, I think it happens all the time. I will incorporate that into my vocabulary along with confirmation bias. Thank you very much, beloved listener. What was their name?
Don't know. They didn't leave it, but that's okay.
But
Jen,
we love you.
You said, yes, the cicadas this year, it's the first in 244 years that all the species have emerged at the same time. Someone saying there's a few two species of cicadas that are emerging at the same time this year, same thing. And Alyssa in Jindabyne, you said, my boy from South Australia had never heard of a cicada until we saw some shells on a tree in Bowral the other weekend. Crazy that some people had never seen one before.
You generally don't see them because they only pop out for a few weeks. They've got a lifespan of several weeks. In that time, they've got to meet each other, love each other very much, have babies, and then the female will inject the seeds, the baby eggs, into the branches of trees, which in some cases of fruit trees can become so weakened that they actually break and fall down. And then the babies fall to the ground and then hide underground for the next 7 to 17 years.
Wow.
During that time, they stick close to the roots of the trees and they get their nutrition entirely from the root. And then when the time is right, and we think we've worked out how they know, how they count time by looking how the roots of the trees change between summer and winter. And we don't know where the program is in their brain. It says, when you get to 7 of these cycles, come out. Or in the case of the greengrocer, 7, when you get to a certain number of cycles, come out. And they all come out at the same time, driven by the song. And they've got different types of song. There's a let's all get together and love each other very much one. And there's I'm looking for you in person. You personally, you're the one I want, as opposed to the group one. And then there's the also get away from me because I'm big and tough. And they've got these different sounds, and they make them by the equivalent of a wobble board. So they've got these plates that they go blip, 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 and 120 dB, as loud as a large passenger jet taking off 10 metres away.
Wow. Oh, my God. Okay, I think we need those sounds, those songs. I think that would make dating a little bit easier. Pat from Tweed. Let's get to your question before we take a break.
Dr. Pat?
You've got a question about neutron stars. What's your question?
Yeah, hi doctors. I once read that when you add mass to a neutron star, its volume will decrease. Now I'm trying to figure out if, 1, this is true, and 2, if it is true, how does it work?
A neutron star has a balance between outward pressure and inward pressure. The inward pressure is gravity, and the outward pressure is neutron degeneracy. So you probably haven't heard of something called the Pauli exclusion principle. But the Pauli exclusion principle says that two subatomic particles that are identical can't occupy the same energy band. And normally that applies to electrons, but it also applies to neutrons. Okay, I forgot to mention what neutrons are. So an atom is like a mini solar system, and instead of having the sun at the middle, you've got a heavy lumpy nucleus, then empty space, and then instead of electrons going around, you got, instead of planets going around in the solar system, you've got electrons. Now the electrons are negative, and in the nucleus, the lumpy bit in the middle, you've got neutrons, which are neutral, and you've got positrons, which are positive. So you've got the nucleus, which is slightly positive, and the electrons, which are negative, and the forces, the gravitational forces, when the nucleophiles go out in the sun, they mush them all together. And the negative electrons get mushed into the positive protons to give you neutrons. And it's not as though you've got this ball of neutrons 20 kilometres across. Look it up in Wikipedia, it's complicated. But the point is that as you add more mass, the energy equations are such that the increase in gravitational energy is less than the energy needed to pump the neutrons up to a higher energy state in the Pauli exclusion principle. That's really complicated physics, but the point is that they will, if you add more mass, they will get smaller because it's energetically favourable to do so. It's
right.
fairly...
The increase in gravity overcomes the neutron degeneracy.
Yeah, that's right. The neutron degeneracy is where they try to stay away from each other. And the gravitational energy wins. You're dead right. What a good summary you've given there. Thank you.
Adam in Melbourne, what's your question?
Hey, doctors. Yeah, I was just wondering, what is psychosis? Like, I understand it's a mental state, but yeah, what brings it on and what gets someone out of it, and what do they experience?
Psychosis is very tricky because it is a mental condition that can be related to other mental conditions, but it has 3 primary characteristics by which you can identify it. By the way you identify it is kind of picking, one symptom from column A, one from column B, one from column C. It's not as though you can do a blood test for it, right? We can't do that yet, and we can't do a brain scan for it. So 1 is hallucinations, and they can be visual or auditory, that's the most common, or smell, that's one thing. The second one is delusions, where you believe that every time a car goes past, that's a sign that you're going to find a 20-cent note, a coin on the pavement somewhere. And the third one is disordered thinking, where you have difficulty in thinking, but then most people can sort of get away with having a disordered conversation, and people don't actually point that out as a psychosis. The causes can be other mental conditions, so it's sort of like another layer, like such as schizophrenia or bipolar, which is surprising, and even severe depression can be serious. So when somebody has depression, listen, it's not that they're sad because their dog died, but there could be something else going on. Substance abuse. As a medical doctor, I ran across a case of one guy who had only 1 dose of acid and then believed that he was David Bowie, the thin white duke, because he saw a reflection in a windscreen. Now, it could have happened anyway, or it might have been the acid, we don't know. It's a sample size of 1, so you don't know. So substance abuse and alcohol too. And then certain physical conditions affecting the brain can do it. So you might fall over and hit your head and everything's fine. And then a few weeks later you start having these psychoses and you didn't relate them. And then extreme trauma. So if your whole family has been shot in a war, which unfortunately does happen, then suddenly you can find a way out by going into psychosis. The treatments are kind of dodgy, but sometimes they do work. Early intervention does help. It's a very frightening experience, so if you know somebody who's suffering from it, ask them to reach out, get some help from the medical profession. But we can't always fix every case of psychosis. We just can't at the moment. We're not good enough. Is that a sad answer there? Sorry?
Yeah, no, that's a very in-depth answer. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. We've got Sage in Wollongong here. Sage, what's your question?
Hi, doctors. My question is, what blue things would bowerbirds collect before man-made products?
Well, with regard to the bowerbirds, the female bowerbird was actually quite attractive if you're talking about the satin bowerbird, because she is blue. Now, let's just do a little diversion on the word blue. In your eyeball, in your retina, you've got about 2 million cells in each eyeball that are devoted to picking up a certain colour. 1 million of them are really good at picking up red and less good at the other colours. And 1 million are really good at picking up green and are less good at the other colours. And with regard to blue, mate, it ain't a million. It's a lousy 10,000. And that's because, as you said, there's not many blue things in the environment, but there's no blue food that I can think of apart from blueberries. But there are blue flowers and blue feathers from other bowerbirds and blue shells and blue butterfly wings and seed pods. And they find this is attractive to help bring the other bowerbird into their nest and think that they're really hunky and worthy of making babies with. So there are some blue colours, but there's not many. And our brain does some sort of compensation to make, to bring 10,000 cells in your retina up to 1 million. There's some sort of, fake AI happening inside your brain.
Damn. Thanks, Dr. Karl.
Damn.
Thank you, Dr. Sage.
Thanks, Sage. All right, we got Reese in Adelaide. Dr. Reese, what's your question?
Dr. Karl, Dr. Lucy, I'm hoping you can tell me what the point of a fly is, because they are driving me up the wall.
The point of the fly, Dr. Reese, is to help you achieve enlightenment and calm and line up all your kundalinis and your chakras. And this is your opportunity to become a truly enlightened being. On the other hand, the main point for them is to be eaten by bigger creatures and to eat smaller things below them. They're part of nature's grand plan, and they do fit into the category of an insect, and therefore they fit in with that overall plan that if all we humans went, life would go on, but if all the insects went, life would collapse. So they are a necessary part of the, complex tapestry of life. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm failing at enlightenment, I tell you that.
Okay, now...
Reese, can I actually read out Reese's text? It said, what is the point of a fly other than to piss me off?
Whoa. Now, DEET works in most cases and it's fairly benign, but there are some people who do have a skin reaction to DEET. Have you tried DEET?
What's DEET?
Diethyl something, and in the name of it, there's only one E, but it's called DEET, and I can never work out why. If somebody can read their Wikipedia article and turn it into English for me, please ring in. I'd be ever so grateful.
Is that a fly repellent?
It's an all-in-one insect repellent, and it's kind of the best. And in some cases, it can have mild effects. But on the other hand, malaria kills 500,000 people a year. So it's the lesser of two evils. And so it might be okay for you, Reese. Have you tried DEET?
I'll take anything at the moment.
Oh, dear, he's desperate, the poor fellow.
Dr. Karl,
Yeah,
my
Dr. Lucy.
my dad has asked this question before as well.
Yeah.
You know, why the fact that we react to flies in such a way that, yeah, we've got repellent, we're swatting them away, we're hitting them, we're trying to kill them, and we've been doing that for hundreds of years. Why has a fly not gone back to the head honcho and gone, listen, they don't like us, okay? We got to, why isn't evolution doing its thing to say, listen, the big guys, they don't like us out there. We got to stop. We got to stop going near them.
Because we're a very unimportant part of the food chain with regard to flies.
We're not a threat. Or
we're not a threat, and we're not a major food supply for them either. We're just sort of incidental on the horizon. Putting that in mind, we need an entomologist. Tom comes from the Greek word segment, and insects have segments. So we need an entomologist to ring in and please explain more on this difficult topic and difficult question that Lucy just raised.
Yeah, thanks, Reese.
Thank you, Reese, for opening our eyes.
We're with you, Reese. And we've got Cameron on the Sunshine Coast. Now, Dr. Cameron, you've got a question about blood types. What's up?
G'day, doctors. Yeah, my question's about blood types and dietary requirements. Now, partner and I are trying to get the old summer body going for the lovely summer season coming up. So we went on a carnivore diet, and I shredded weight, and she didn't lose as much weight. Now, we checked into it with she's B pos and I'm O pos, and we found out that things that she's actually eating are actually bad for her, although they're healthy to eat. Is there anything that we can sort of look into?
Look, you've been kind, I'm sorry. So the link between the food that you should eat and your blood type is indistinguishable from zero. There's a tiny little rumble of noise, but then it gets overwritten in later scientific papers. So basically there's nothing going on. They're just trying to con you. I don't know who they are. And the carnivore diet can work for a while, but long-term it's not good because your gut is not a short 1 metre gut. You've got a 10-metre gut. And for it to work well and to keep your brain development good, because you need the free fatty acids made by the bacteria in the tail end of your gut. You need them for your brain. And so, but in the short term, sure, any diet will lose some degree of weight. Look, I would tend to follow Claire Collins's site at the University of Newcastle. What is it? No time, no money, or something like that, and reach out to them to get a diet that is a good long-term diet. But if you're feeling okay, I guess that's okay for the short term.
So the dietary requirements don't have anything to do with the blood type?
No, that's a link. You can find some sort of papers here and there that say there is, and then they're discounted by later papers. So if there is a link, it's really, really minor.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Cameron.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you,
we
Cameron.
did an episode with Claire Collins recently and answered a question about the carnivore diet and, you know, what that kind of stuff you talked about, Dr. Karl, with the length of the gut and what that can mean, and also how being on a carnivore diet, smelly farts.
Yes.
Smelly farts. Hey, Dr. Karl, we got a text about the bowerbird.
Ah, hurrah.
Baden, he said, the satin bowerbird female is mottled brown, not blue. Adult males are blue, not females.
You are so right. Thank you. Thank you.
The
By
only
way, I made a
bird where the
mistake.
female is brighter than the male is the eclectus parrot from far north Queensland.
I'm suspecting we're getting advice from an ornithology birdie person who loves them. So
Yes.
say that again. The only bird where the
Female is
female-
brighter than the male is the eclectus parrot.
really, so in all other cases, the male is brighter to say, come and have babies with me because I'm so cool and I've got a wonderful skin colour.
Yeah. Yes.
Except for the one parrot. And can you tell us why that parrot is the case, please, dear listener?
Baden, come through.
Baden,
0439 75 7555. All right.
Thank you for setting us straight. We love that.
Please. We've got Hayden here from Onslow. Hayden, what's your question?
G'day, doctors. So I've got a 1-year-old, and me and my partner were talking. Is there any correlation between like the smell of a baby and breastfeeding?
What, in that you, by breastfeeding the baby, your partner then makes the baby have a different smell? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, do you know how babies have like, say, a different scent to them almost, that sort of newborn baby smell? We've noticed with our eldest one that she sort of lost that scent as soon as she stopped breastfeeding.
Oh, hang on, say that again. As soon as she stopped breastfeeding, and how many months down the line was that?
It would have been around the 7-month mark.
Right. Because they do tend to lose that new baby smell at some stage, and it could be a coincidence. I've sort of chased this up a little bit because I'm getting involved with babies again. And it turns out that, well, firstly, there's an article in the November Scientific American that says that if you're a woman breastfeeding the baby and you're there, all sorts of good things happen and the baby ends up better, and not to try to make people feel guilty if they have to go to work and all that sort of stuff. So certainly the baby responds better to the woman giving out the smell of the breast and will automatically open its mouth. So if you get a baby near the smell of a female breast with breast milk in it, it'll reduce the pain score. Just wafting that smell over the baby reduces the pain score if you have to, for example, take blood from the baby. Also, it will reduce the amount of crying when you're doing that Heel blood prick test in the first couple of days of birth, and also to decrease salivary cortisol or adrenaline scores.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
And then the maternal behaviour. So it also, the maternal odours from the mother just generally increase mouthing responses. So when the baby smells the mother, as well as just the breast, but the mother in general, it'll tend to open its mouth more, saying, "Come here, milk machine." We haven't found a link between the smell of the baby and then the mother breastfeeding. But the thing that you said was very interesting, and that falls into the category of anecdote. Now we need some follow-up research on it, which hasn't been done yet, as far as I know.
Yeah, okay, so just purely coincidental.
Maybe, we don't know. You could have been the first, what we call sentinel report, that started some scientists listening thinking, I'm going to go and research that, and they could all be called the Hayden and partner reflex or something like that.
Yeah.
No worries. All right. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Hayden. We got Phil in Thirroul. Dr. Phil, what would you like to know?
Hey, doctors. My question is, I remember reading an article. It was about air conditioning units and how that can increase global warming. And I just don't know if there's any correlation between them both and if there's any data taken from it.
Oh, yeah. So if you're getting your electricity from renewables, air conditioning doesn't do anything to global warming. But if you're getting your electricity from fossil fuels, it does. And worldwide, air conditioning is about 5 to 10% of electricity consumption in the country, averages out to 7%. And that's a fairly significant amount. So air conditioning does make global warming worse. And when you've got global warming, you've got to have more air conditioning, and so it goes. The good news is that we can begin to stop and reverse global warming, climate change in 10 years, simply by not taking any more atoms of carbon that are underground and bringing them to the surface. Just leave them there. Just leave all the carbon atoms that are underground, just leave them there, and the planet will heal itself. And we're doing all sorts of the other measures and getting more efficient. We're doing all sorts of good things. We just need to do that big major step of stopping. But yes, 7% of global electricity consumption.
Okay, well, does that matter where the actual unit is outside? Because you have the increase in the ambient temperature locally around it. So you have multiple units that could increase the temperature within that local area.
The main cause of the temperature rise is the carbon dioxide acting like a one-way valve. And on one hand, if it was 100% efficient, an air conditioning unit would not increase the temperature, because what it's doing is getting heat from one place inside and transferring that heat outside. But it's not 100% efficient, maybe only 80%. So there is extra heat generated in shifting that heat from one place to another.
Yeah,
But
right.
you also get another thing called the city island bubble or heat bubble, and air conditioning units will help with that. On the other hand, if you plant lots of trees in parking lots, then that helps bring the temperature down, but that cuts down on a number of cars that you can park there. And you can sort of see the people thinking, I'm just going to get as much money as possible and ignore the big picture. So that leads to another thing. But yes, 7% of the world's electricity.
Okay, yeah, sweet. No, thanks for that, doctors. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much, Dr. Phil.
And we've got
Thank you.
Luke in Canberra. Dr. Luke, what is your question?
Howdy, doctors. My question is, does a lithium-ion battery get heavier when I charge it?
Yes. We haven't been able to measure it, but we know that it must because of Einstein's famous 1905 equation of E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And so if you're putting more energy into a battery, some of that shows itself as increased mass. Our mass measuring machines are not accurate enough to measure that tiny amount. However, our time measuring machines are much more accurate, and we can measure the change in gravity when you lift an atomic clock by 1 millimetre or when you move it at a few centimetres per hour. But mass we can't measure, but we know that it should be happening. Although there could be a recent report where they have actually been able to measure that mass. If somebody has got any information, please text in on the magic number.
0439 757 555.
That one.
Luke, does that help?
That helps tremendously. Thank you.
Dr. Aaron, what do you want to know?
Hi, doctors. Look, I enjoy going up to Lake Eildon every summer, but at the moment they've got blue-green algae, and I was wondering what causes it, and is it still safe to swim in?
So blue-green algae are also called cyanobacter, which is kind of a cheat because cyano just means blue. Mate, how do they get away with that? And they thrive when you've got slow or completely still water and hot days and enough nutrients for them. So stuff like agricultural runoff. And in some, but not all cases, they can make toxins that are harmful or fatal to humans. So you can just jump into water and accidentally sort of swallow a bit of water. And in some cases you'll get away with it, in some cases not. And I don't know which ones are which. We really need not a bacteriologist, an archaeologist, because there are... Oh, no, look, I think a bacteriologist would give us the answer. What you get is you can get skin and eye irritation. If you're getting the eye irritation, you know that's a bad place, and then you shouldn't stay in there. Have you jumped in when it's been with blue-green algae floating?
Yeah, I've been swimming in there. Just not drinking the water or getting it in my mouth or eyes is the aim.
And did you get any skin irritation?
No, not that I could tell, to be honest, no.
What you could do for fun is grab some of the blue-green algae and chuck it in a fridge, or if you've got an esky with something cold, and then try to get it tested by a bacteriologist to see if it's the one that makes the toxins. I mean, this is just intellectually curious, and it would take a bit of effort trying to find that person, but they would know. Yeah. And in an ideal world, they would be connected to you via the internet, and they would ring you up and say, give it to me, and you're thinking, how'd they get my phone number?
Yeah, I don't know any.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, thank you.
We got Baden in Melbourne. Dr. Baden, what's your question?
Hi, doctors. I just wanted to ask, so when we look at the stars, we're looking into the past.
Mm-hmm.
If there was no scientific constraints on how far back we could see, could we theoretically see the Big Bang?
We can see a long way towards the Big Bang. The thing is that the universe is expanding, and because you've got expansion, things are moving away from everything else, and this causes a Doppler shift called the red shift. Things become more red. So that was the beauty of the JWST, the Just Wonderful Space Telescope, which looks deep into the red infrared. It looks in the infrared. And it can pick up things further back in time than the Hubble could. But the limit seems to be 380,000 years. So after the Big Bang. So what you got is a Big Bang, and then everything starts spreading out in all directions, and it's all very hot. And then it begins to cool down, and at 3 minutes, not years, but 3 minutes of age, the nuclei, the cores, the centres of the atoms coalesce. And they're the atoms of hydrogen and helium, but the electrons can't join onto them. They're not a full atom. You've got to wait another 380,000 years, and then all the electrons get mopped up, and they then stick to the atoms of hydrogen and helium. But from that time, from zero up to 380,000 years, the universe was just a mess, a whole swirling turmoil of electrons, and telescopes can't see through that. None of our telescopes could. So the phrase that the scientists use is the universe became transparent at 380,000 years of age. So maybe we can see back all the way almost to then, and then whether we can see gravitational waves from before then is still up for grabs because we've only got very primitive gravity wave telescopes running at the moment. Does that kind of help, Baden?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Dr.
Baden. Tom in Canberra, you got a question about the speed of light.
Hi, doctors. My question is, why is the speed of light, not faster or slower, and why is that kind of the speed limit for our universe?
I discovered this when I was studying physics, and I ran across this equation. The speed of light equals 1 divided by, and then you got the square root sign, and you got two things there inside that square root sign. And these two things discuss properties of space. So, you know how we've got space? You got 3 dimensions of space. You have backwards, forwards, left, right, and up, down. And then you got time, and they're the 4 dimensions. That thing we call space has a property called electrical permittivity, which kind of relates to how stiff it is with regard to electricity going through it. And it's got another thing called magnetic permeability, which is how stiff is space in response to magnetic fields going through it. So the speed of light is equal to 1 divided by the square root of something describing how stiff space is with regard to electricity, and something describing how stiff space is with regard to magnetism. And so that's a fundamental kind of locked-in property of space, and therefore the speed of light itself is constant.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a perfect answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. And we got Kai in Burleigh Heads. Kai, you are the last question for the Science Hour of 2024. What do you want to know?
Hey, doctors. My question is about the ocean. I went for a surf last weekend, and it was northerly winds on the east coast, as you know. And the water was really chilly, like there was a current coming up from the south. I just wanted to know what that was, because obviously the north wind would make it hot, but the water felt like it was winter again.
Now I'm going to teach you 2 clever words, and they are Ekman spiral. Now, you know how whenever you go for a surf, you're staring there at the waves, and somebody says what you look at, you're saying, oh, I'm checking out the surf, mate. So in this case, you just say it's Ekman spiral. Look it up on Wikipedia. It was discovered by a Swedish scientist, and they're spirals that may be tens of kilometres, 100 kilometres across, going down 5 kilometres, and they bring the cold water up from below.
Right.
Ekman spiral, E-K or E-C-K-M-A-N. And when somebody says, gee, it's cold today, you can say knowledgeably, yeah, mate, it's the Ekman spiral.
Right, no, I didn't know that, because it felt like we went back in time to winter again.
Yeah, I only learned about it because I was saying to another surfer at the beach, gee, it's bloody cold. And he says, yeah, mate, it's the Ekman spiral. How do you spell that? And I looked it up.
Oh, so he told you that?
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's how I learn. I ask questions and I have people to tell me stuff.
I love that. Kai, thanks so much for your question.
Yeah.
Beauty, thank you. I'll dive into it.
Capping off for 2024, Dr. Karl, it is damn good. Now, for this episode, we're giving away a prize to the best question. So, the best question for this episode goes to Baden.
When we look at the stars, we're looking into the past.
Mm-hmm.
If there was no scientific constraints on how far back we could see, could we theoretically see the Big Bang?
I love it. We love a big thinker. We love a hypothetical, Baden. We're going to be giving you a Triple J prize pack, which includes Dr. Karl's new book, A Periodic Tale. Dr. Karl, it's been such a great year with you, as per usual. I love hanging out with you.
And I love learning so much from the audience who then ask questions to which I have to say, I have no idea, mate, but thank you.
Yeah.
And give me more homework and I'll learn stuff. Look, thank you, audience, for taking us on this trip. And remember, science is not a bunch of facts. Science is a way to try and understand the universe. And I've learned a lot from you, beloved audience, this year.
Yeah.
And from you, Lucy, with your bringing back to mind of, what was that phrase again? That
Confirmation bias?
Yeah, that one there. And what was the recent one?
Recency bias?
Love recency bias.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we give each other a lot to think about, and we hope we do the same for you. Dr. Karl, have a good holiday. We'll see you next year.
Oh, this is so wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy, and thank you, beloved audience.
And that's it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Science with Dr. Karl, our final instalment for 2024. But the fun continues. We're not leaving you over summer. In fact, we are giving you a best of the best. For 3 weeks, we're going to be compiling the best questions from the year that was, bringing them to you, questions about space, about the human body, and about the future, looking ahead. Those are going to be in your feed from next week, so make sure you're subscribed, liked, rated, so you're the first to know when those summer episodes drop just for you. My name's Lucy Smith. It's been such a pleasure bringing you Science with Dr. Karl, both live on air on Triple J, Thursdays 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight or Standard Time, depending on when you're listening, and bringing you this podcast as well. We've got plenty more for you in 2025. We cannot wait. Have a safe festive season. This episode and this podcast was produced by Sarah Harvey, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Dave Marchese here from the Triple J Hack team. Hey, if you love Dr. Karl's podcast like I do, you might enjoy the Hack podcast as well. Each day we bring you the news that matters to you, from the latest science on climate change to what's happening in politics and news around the world. The Hack podcast. It's your daily fix of the news you need to know. Get it wherever you're listening now.